Uh, Good evening, everyone. Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am, you're audible. Good
Okay. Good evening, everyone. I, Dr. Manisha Bis, welcome you all to today's session of Faculty Guidelines Seminar, COVID-19 Crisis and Management. Today's session will be taken by Dr. Ambar Prasad from the Department of Microbiology. He'll be discussing about the infection prevention control practices related to COVID-19 management, and he'll be basically talking about the precautions related to ventilations, biomedical waste management issues, and how the use of PPE. So I invite now Dr. Ambar Prasad to kindly start his presentation.
Thank you, ma'am. Good evening, everyone, one and all. I would just like, since I hope my screen is visible.
Yes, it's visible.
Yes, ma'am. It is a very, important and the burning topic nowadays. Like, what are the infection prevention and control practices that needs to be followed? So the first of all thing, what do's and what don'ts, and that needs to be followed is like we should wear scrubs on duty, and especially for the COVID area, like we should be wearing the scrubs which are provided at the hospital itself, and we should discard the scrubs and we should go home with our own, clean scrubs. Then the shoes, like it should be covered, it should cover your feet completely, and it should be made up of either plastic or rubber, or shoes like cut shoes or any kind of slippers are always a no-no. It shouldn't, you should avoid. And avoid having loose hair. It should be tied in the form of either the ponytail or in the form of bun. Whenever you step out, according to you should always use mask, and you should use it appropriately as per the correct procedure. And these masks, like it may be either, standard mask or homemade. It should be washable, and cloth facing. It should be snugly fit. It should be comfortable to the side of the face, and it should be secured with the ties or ear loops. It should contain multiple layers of fabrics, and it should allow breathing. And you shouldn't wear any kinds of jewelry, especially in the form of either wrist watches or bangles or any kinds of chain or any kinds of rings. Then the medical equipment such as pulse oximeter or the glucometer or stethoscope, preferably it should be kept at workplace only. And if suppose you're required to be used between different patients, so it has to be disinfected in between. And you shouldn't avoid carrying bags to the hospital. If suppose you're carrying to the bag, you should leave the bag to your chamber, and then you should go without carrying any bags or any belongings. So when going home, you should call someone and you should leave them instructions like, like before entering, you should disinfect items, what you're carrying, such as the keys or phones or pens. And you should sanitize and clean your hands and feet, and you should soak your shoes to disinfect. Shoes, like that is where the shoes like plastic or rubber shoes are advisable. And preferably you should take a shower, including head bathing, and also the scrub suit which you have used, you should soak and separately wash it. And the clothes should be dried in bright sunlight. Then social distancing should always be maintained throughout. And there are like after going home, you should avoid ringing a bell, touching the door handle, and also avoid carrying unnecessary medical equipments to at home. And I said earlier that you shouldn't wear the same scrub suit without washing. So the scrub suit meant for the COVID area should be the hospital itself, and you should take over the. You should wear your scrub suit, which is clean. So the chain of transmissions, like I'll be dealing under like what are the standard precautions and specific precautions. Then regarding the hand hygiene, then cough etiquettes, then regarding the personal protective equipment, then what should be the placement of the patients in the hospital, then what type of cleaning should be done, and the biomedical based management. So basically, who is at risk? As you see, as you can see from the diagram, like all the people, everyone that are involved in this setting, everyone are at risk. So basically, we have to break this chain of infection by using standard precautions. So like any infectious agent, maybe it a bacteria or viruses or any kinds of, fungus. So what happens like this, in the reservoir, it may be present in the, in the form of either in the form of like in the patient or where the pathogens can live in either in the form of bats or in the dogs, or humans may carry this infection. And it may like these causes like different portal of exits also there by either coughing or sneezing or through an open lesion, or maybe, the infection may be passed through the urine or during removal of blood, or by an insect bite which can transmit to another healthy individual, or the pathogen might be discharged in the feces also. So this, there are various, like it may be like airborne transmission, or it may be through direct contact or indirect contact, and different pathogens like in the form of food, water, or insect bite or airborne droplet. And there are various portals of entry, either through the conjunctival route or through the oral route, respiratory route, either wounds or like the puncture of the skin by through the insect bite or genital tract, or through infections from therapeutic techniques, parenteral. So these like generally infect to the susceptible host, which are either extremes of ages or immunocompromised, any kinds of like any kinds of immunosuppression, maybe in the form of renal transplant or diabetes mellitus or any any other thing. So we this infection can be broken down by at various stages during this chain, and this involves all healthcare professionals, all health professionals. So what are the standard precautions? They are basically a set of infection control practices which are reduced to transmit, reduce the transmission of microorganism in all kinds of healthcare settings, and also they are recommended for the care of all patients, regardless of whether they are suspected or they are confirmed infection. And these involve both healthcare personnel as well as the patients from contact with infectious agents. And these standard precautions, they should be used by all patients, for all patients, and it should be used all the time. So these include hand hygiene, then various respiratory hygienes and cough etiquettes, then involvement of the personal protective equipment, then environmental cleaning, then appropriate handling of linen, safe use and disposal of sharp and biomedical waste management. So these are the key components which I had said. And the respiratory hygiene or cough etiquettes, like whenever you feel like coughing or sneezing, you should cover your mouth with a tissue or with the help of your elbow. And if suppose the tissue should be disposed of in the nearest receptacle, or after coughing or sneezing, you should wash your hand with soap and water, or you should use a hand rub. And always wear a mask if you are coughing and or sneezing. Avoid without mask. So how often do you practice hand hygiene after touching only surfaces in the patient room? Like if you, that is, you did not touch the patient, or how often do you wear gloves when hand may be contaminated with body fluids, like during suctioning or from an endotracheal tube, or collecting urine from a catheter? So, and also like how often do you practice hand hygiene after removing gloves? Generally, you should, these things needs to be pondered on. So hand hygiene is basically a term that is applies to either hand washing or antiseptic hand wash or antiseptic hand rub or surgical hand antisepsis. So it has got various importance, and there are various movements and methods and different types. So why is it considered like hand hygiene? Why is it so considered so important? So like this hand hygiene through the infections like in the healthcare facilities, through if hand hygiene is performed properly, that can reduce the rate of infection in the hospital drastically. So the most common mode of transmission of infection is the hands of the healthcare personnel, and the source of the pathogens are the germs which are already present within the patients. So these hand hygiene, this is a part of the standard precautions, and this can reduce the transmission of healthcare associated setting. I mean, to you or to your patients as well as to you. So the areas like the most frequently missed areas during hand hygiene, normal hand hygiene, is the tips of the fingers, various fingers, and then and this like the front of the hand. So when should one practice hand hygiene? Whenever whenever hands are visibly dirty or contaminated, like before having contact with the patients, or before putting on gloves, or before inserting any kinds of invasive devices on the patient, or if you are manipulating any invasive device. Also, after having contact with the patient's skin, either our body fluids or any kinds of excretion, or non-intact skin, wound dressings, or contaminated items, and also having contact with the inanimate objects near a patient, and after removing gloves. So these are the conditions where you should always practice hand hygiene. So these are the moments of the hand hygiene when it should be practiced in a hospital. There are 5 moments of hand hygiene. So number one, before any having patient and before any patient contact. So why is it? To protect the patient against any harmful germs carried on your hands. So before the second, the moment is before any before an aseptic task. So why is it so? So protect the patient against harmful germs, including patient's own germs, or to enter his or her body. Then third moment of hand hygiene is after body fluid exposure risk, so as to protect yourself as well as the environment from the patient harmful germs. And fourth is the after any before and after. This is after patient contact, so as to protect yourself and healthcare environment from patient harmful germs. And lastly is after contact with the patient's surrounding, so as to protect yourself and healthcare environment. Healthcare environment from patient's harmful germs. So they are one is the hand washing, the other is hand rub, and the other is surgical hand rub. Hand washing is washing hands with simple plain soap and water, and hand rub is with the help of alcohol containing preparation, and surgical hand rub, hand washing using an alcohol based hand rub before operation by any surgical procedure. So the indications for the hand rub is during 5 moments of hand hygiene, then during routine clinical rounds and handling of the patients, and when no facility for hand wash is available, and when the hand is not visibly dirty. The duration of the hand rub, it should be less than 20 to 30 seconds, preferably less than around 20 seconds. And amount taken or amount of hand rub taken is 3 to 5 ml. When should hand wash with soap and water should be done? It should be when the it's visibly soiled with dirt, blood, body fluid, or gloves powder, and handling all patients with diarrhea, or after using a washroom, or before or handling medication or food. And the duration is for 40 to 60 seconds, and the amount of liquid soap used is 3 to 5 ml. And surgical hand rub, which is used prior to any kind of surgical procedure, duration is 2 to 5 minutes, and amount is used is 15 ml. So why are alcohol based hand rubs so great? Like these alcohol based hand rubs, they kill more effectively and more quickly as compared to hand washing with normal soap and water, and they are also less damaging to skin than soap and water, which results in like dryness, more dryness if you use soap and water, and also irritation. And this alcohol based hand rub requires less time than hand washing with soap and water, and they can be placed at the point of care in either in dispensers or bottles, so that they are more accessible as compared to you have to require like for the soap for soap and water you need to go to the wash basin, which is not feasible. So the best is alcohol based hand rub. So alcohol based hand rub is the preferred method of hand hygiene in all routine situations, except for when your hands are visibly dirty or contaminated. So when you should wash your hands, like when hands are visibly dirty, contaminated with blood or body fluids, and when there are potential exposure to either spore-forming organism like Clostridium difficile or non-enveloped viruses, enterovirus, rotaviruses, or handling patients having diarrhea, and after using restroom and handling medication or food. So this is the step. Like initially, you have to take cover your hand like in the palm, apply the product 3 to 5 ml of hand rub. So rub hands palm to palm. That is followed by right arm palm over the left dorsum with interlaced fingers and vice versa. Then the fourth step is like palm to palm with the fingers interlaced. Then back of the fingers to opposing palms with fingers interlocked, and rotational movement, rubbing of the thumb clasped in the right arm and vice versa similarly. And lastly, the knuckles, the tip of the fingers should be used in the clockwise or anti-clockwise manner, and similarly vice versa. And lastly, like the wrist also. This is what we followed in our hospital. So research has shown, they have shown that the action of the clinician like influence the behavior of the others. So you should be everyone should be a role model at your facility, so that the subordinate also follow suit what you're doing. And we should show colleagues like hand hygiene is an important part of quality care. By simple performing hand hygiene, we can reduce the infection rates drastically. Coming to the ventilation, why is ventilation important? Like adequate ventilation is required, and it reduces the risk from aerosol transmission, especially when someone breathes in small particles in the air and after the virus has been in the same enclosed area. So if the room is like, if the area is poorly ventilated, the risk is greater. And this ventilation reduces the aerosol risk, but it has got like less impact on the droplet transmission and also in contact transmission. So one can reduce the risk of aerosol transmission by making sure that the infected workers or any visitors with the virus symptoms, they do not come into the workplace, and by providing adequate ventilation with fresh air, either in the form of exhaust in that area, or by limiting the number of people in the area, and workers, those who are working, spending less time in the occupied area. Then look for the how to identify poorly ventilated areas. Areas should be prioritized, and there are simple ways to identify poorly ventilated areas. Like we should look for the areas where the people work, and if there's no mechanical ventilation or no natural ventilation, such as like there should be preferably there should be an exhaust which should be working round the clock. And also the air should not recirculate and should not have outdoor air supply. And this so the larger the area, the lower is the risk, because larger areas, they have more air to dilute the virus, and it has to be larger areas tend to be designed with a higher ventilation rates, and it takes longer time for the aerosols to build up, and desks or ceiling fans should not be used in the poorly ventilated areas. So if you decide to use an air cleaning unit, so most suitable type use are like with the use of high efficiency filters or ultra based devices should be used. So the coming to the personal protective equipment, like they are specialized clothing or equipment which is worn by an employee to protect against any kinds of infectious material. So the goal is to improve the personal safety in the healthcare environment through appropriate use of PPE. So PPE, personal protective equipment, may involve either caps, gloves when hand contamination is anticipated, gowns, apron or body suits when soiling of the clothes may occur, mask and respirator when splashes may occur, goggles, face shields, shoe covers. So what type of PPE you should wear? When should you wear? So during the suctioning oral secretion, gloves, mask or goggles or face shields should be used. In an emergency or wounded patients, you should use glove, mask, gown, cap, goggle or face shield. During the during phlebotomy, like gloves, only gloves should be used. Cleaning and incontinent patients with diarrhea, gloves, mask and gown. Irrigating a wound, gloves, mask, gown, caps and goggles and face shields, and taking vitals, usually none. But in this scenario, you should always wear masks and gloves. So these gloves they are disposable barrier, serves two functions, basically to protect your hands from potentially infectious material when providing patient care, and also before touching any mucous membrane or non-intact skin or contaminated surfaces or objects. And you should always perform hand hygiene after removing gloves. And these gloves are not a replacement for hand hygiene, and you should put new gloves before contact with non-contact skin or mucous membrane. And you should remove gloves after caring for a patient, and you should not wear the same gloves for more than one patient, and do not reuse or wash gloves. And sterile gloves should be used in any kind of surgical procedures or vaginal delivery or invasive radiological procedures, or preparing total parenteral nutrition and chemotherapeutic agents. Then indication like examination gloves should be used for if there is any direct patient exposure, contact with the blood, mucous membrane, or with any non-contact skin, or in the potential presence of any highly infectious and dangerous organism, and with at the time of drawing blood or during IV insertion and removal or discontinuation of a venous line. Then they should also indirect patient exposure like during emptying emissus basins or handling or cleaning. Then during handling waste or cleaning up of spills of body fluids. So gloves are not indicated like during while taking blood pressure or temperature and pulse, like performing subcutaneous or intramuscular injections, bathing and dressing the patient, like transporting patients and caring for the eyes and ears, any vascular line manipulation in absence of blood leakage. And during indirect patient exposure, like during while using the telephone or writing in the patient chart or giving oral medication or distributing or collecting patient dietary trays or removing and replacing linen for patient bed or moving patient furniture. So this is a triangle where it has been indicated where sterile gloves should be used, where examination gloves should be used in the clinical settings, and where the gloves are not indicated. So coming to the mask and respirators, these masks, they prevent splashes or sprays from reaching the mucous membrane, and they block the oral secretions from your mouth to the patient during surgery or lumbar puncture, and also during the routine care of patients on droplet precautions. So any kinds of surgical procedures, they help. So this is so what are the points should be considered while using a mask? They should be changed whenever they become soiled or wet, and they should never be reapplied after they have been removed. And they should be not dangling around the neck, which is a common sign, which is a common thing which we see. And this shouldn't happen. And frequent touch, there should no one should touch the front of the mask while wearing, and that should be avoided, completely avoided. Hand hygiene should be performed upon touching or discarding any used mask. Respirators are the type of mask that filter particles from the air, and also they reduce the number of particles or microorganisms inhaled. So different types of respirators are used depending upon the potential hazard. Like particulate respirators are most common use are N95, where they use examples include like during any performance like performing aerosol generating procedure, whether it's intubation or bronchoscopy or during sputum induction, and especially for caring for patients placed on the airborne precautions, COVID-19, SARS or pandemic or avian influenza. So healthcare professionals with like chronic respiratory, cardiac or other medical conditions should check using before an N95 respirator, and a patient with respiratory symptoms may wear a surgical mask to protect others when sitting in public areas of healthcare facility. And also a fit test should be used before using a respirator for the first time. And you should perform a seal check every time a respirator used to whether it's effectively applied or not. So what is the fit test? It's after placing the respirator on the face, compress the respirator to ensure a seal across the face occurs during the cheek and the bridge of the nose. Then you have to check like gently. If air escapes to the side, you have to adjust. And similarly, like by inhaling, you have to check the negative pressure. If the respirator is drawn towards the face or if the air leaks around the face, so we have to readjust for the defects. And the facial hair, including beard, should be shaved as they interfere with the respiratory fittings. So just like like in the second diagram, you can see this is he's exhaling, and the third one is he's inhaling. So this is basically a fit test. So for the eye protection, goggles or face shields are used. So the time has come to double it up according to the latest CDC recommendation. Like as mentioned, a knotted surgical mask, it blocks 56.1%, whereas a cloth mask blocks around 51.4%. But similar mask, if a knot is tugged and surgical, then the surgical mask becomes effective and it blocks around 77%. And if the surgical mask is used along with a cloth mask, it blocks around 85.4%. So knotting the ear loops and tucking in and flattening the material and double masking, it improves the efficiency of the mask. So you should use, like in the non-COVID area, you should always use double masking since it blocks 85.4%. So how to pair it up? Like a surgical mask with a surgical mask, you shouldn't use, you shouldn't pair. And always you should pair a surgical and a cloth mask for double masking. And N95 should not be paired with any kind of mask. So how the personal protective equipment like donning and doffing sequence should be done in the lab. Like the donning, it should be like donning can be done anywhere, like especially in the clean area, whereas doffing has to be done, and it should be the most important step for the discarding is the doffing, that which should have a separate room with a exhaust. And after doffing, patient, at each step, hand hygiene should be performed, and after doffing, you have to, after leaving the doffing area, you have to remove your mask outside, not in the doffing area. So first of all, the donning, like you should wear the shoe cover, perform hand hygiene, then the first pair of gloves, you should wear gown, then wear N95, followed by head cap, then face shield, and you should wear the plastic sheet and the second pair of glove. Then you, this should this donning should be done in front of either you, buddy partner, so that he or she may guide you whether you're doing it correctly or not, or you're missing any step. And the doffing, like supervision, it should be supervised by any supervisor or your colleagues, and hand hygiene should be followed at every step. And you should remove the plastic sheet, outer glove, then after that followed by face shield, then head cover, then you should remove the gown, and the gown should be removed inside out, and it should be rolled, and then it should be discarded. Then the shoe cover should be removed, then the inner glove should be removed, and you should perform like hand hygiene should be performed at each step. And as I said, like the N95 should be removed outside the doffing area, followed by hand hygiene, and a separate mask should be used. Now, you're safe. So the key points of about PPE, like don before contact with any patient, especially generally before entering the COVID area, and it should be used carefully, and this should be removed and discarded carefully, either at the doorway or immediately outside the patient room. And this should have a facility of an exhaust, and the respirator or N95, you should be removed outside the room and followed by immediate hand hygiene. Then various contact precautions should be taken, like wear gloves while in the patient, and you should remove the gloves before leaving the patient's room. You should clean hands, and the visitors should be limited. Then for droplet precaution, like you should wear masks while in the room, and the mask should be discarded in the trash, like after leaving the room, and you should perform hand hygiene, and you should ensure that the door is closed. And during an airborne precaution, negative pressure should be there with the 6 to 12 air exchanges, and you should ensure that the door is closed, and mask should be discarded in the trash after leaving the room, and you should clean hands, ensure that each and every patient is wearing a surgical mask, and the visitors should wear a mask while in the room. So these the recommended, like for in the case of contact transmission, like gown is donned upon entry into a patient room or a patient care area and is removed prior to exit. Then gloves are donned upon entry into the patient room or patient care area, like in the form of droplet transmission based precaution, like face protection upon entry and remove prior to exit. Then surgical mask within 3 feet of patient should be used. Goggles or full face shield should be used. And airborne precautions like N95 or higher level respirator should be worn before entering the room. And negative pressure isolation room should be used. Then patient placement, like single room, prioritize patient with condition that facilitate more transmission, like in example of like uncontained drainage, or if there's the patient suffering from any kind of stool incontinence or excessive cough and sputum production. And cohorting, like the patient with the same pathogens are suitable roommates, like patient, they are placed together in the same room. And the spacing between the beds should be more than 3 feet apart from each other. And the protective, like personal protective equipment should be changed, and hand hygiene should be performed between contact with the patient in the same room. And in the event of any outbreak or exposure involving large number of patients, and also like AD room or airborne infection isolation rooms are used. So the droplet precautions or airborne precautions using masks are crucial while dealing a suspect or confirmed COVID-19 performing aerosol generating procedures. So wherever you work, whatever your job is, you should always use the right personal protective equipment. So cleaning and disinfection in the healthcare facility, like routine cleaning should be used of the patient, like lab areas, then terminal cleaning, then cleaning of the common areas and operation theaters, or standard precaution for the cleaners should be used. So this is a environmental cleaning. It breaks the chain of transmission between an infectious agent and the reservoir. So cleaning is like physical removal of foreign material, or including dust, soil, and organic material, and this physically removes rather than kill microorganism. So this is always essential. It is like prior to any kind of disinfection or sterilization, cleaning has to be done. And the disinfection is the process, like it eliminates many or all pathogenic microorganisms except for the bacterial spores. And this usually involves chemical or heat or ultraviolet light, whereas sterilization is a process which destroys all forms of microbial life. And this is generally carried out in a healthcare facilities by either physical or chemical methods. So steam, it may be steam under pressure, like ETOT, ethylene dioxide, or hydrogen peroxide gas, or plasma sterilizer, or liquid chemicals. They are the principal sterilizing agents which is used in the healthcare facilities. So simple cleaning is by manual or automated in the form of ultrasonic or medical washers, and disinfection by the help of low level or intermediate or high level can be used. And sterilization, as I said, like it may be either hydrogen peroxide steroid or chemical with the help of liquid peroxide or ozone, or in the form of ethylene oxide. So depending upon whether it's a critical, semi-critical, or non-critical, the cleaning, the level of germicidal action required has been, like critical areas require sterilization, semi-critical areas require high-level disinfection, and non-critical areas where there's contact with intact skin, they require low level of disinfection. So basically cleaning involving like high-touch surfaces. High-touch surfaces are surfaces that are frequently touched. So such as if it involves metallic, so 70% alcohol hand rub should be used, and non-metallic surfaces like 0.5% sodium hypochlorite is used. So these are the high-touch surfaces are the like stretchers, like workplace aseptics, infusion stands, monitors, keyboards, light switches, bed rails, doorknobs, shelves, medical equipments. So there are various concentrations of sodium hypochlorite which are used according to, like if in the terminal cleaning 1% is used for 30 minutes, and like for the mopping of the floor in the hospital areas is 0.1%, whereas for quarantine area 0.5%, and it should be like contact period should be more than 1 minute. So there are various like what are the preparations of hypochlorite solution. So coming to the need of the biomedical waste management in hospital, like biomedical waste management has to be like and with a proper disposable and basically segregation at the site of production. It should be used so as to prevent any kinds of healthcare infection, healthcare associated infection. So depending upon the bags and the type of waste, generally color coded bins are available, and like general waste in the and just like in case of yellow bins, human anatomical waste or contaminated waste, gloves, and soil, and all kinds of PP, which is linen based, has to be discarded. In case of red bins, like goggles, face shields, face masks, and all kinds of like plastic, rubber tubings, catheters, they have to be discarded. And this proper care should be taken, like whenever the biomedical bins are carried from the work area, like where they are generated, they should be carried in a closed container, and the worker should be wearing personal protective clothing, and also the trolley shouldn't be overloaded, and there should be no spillage of waste. So these were the views, like during the initial days, what we saw. We took the rounds during the initial days, and these were things that were encountered initially, like someone like stacks of PPE being kept, and someone just unable to just take it out, simply dragging in this figure, dragging the PPE along with him. So, and later on, there was some improvement with regular monitoring, like it became clean and it was properly segregated. Yet many things need to be done. Coming to like the laundry, like soiled textiles, including bedding, towels, and patients. These laundry they are taken in a laundry, and they are dipped in 0.1% hypochlorite solution, and then they are processed. Then they are.
Dr. Amber?
Yes, ma'am. Just
sorry to interrupt. Yes, you have to wind up quickly. I think we are
Yes,
already running short of time.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. So work safe, be safe, and control like standard precaution rules and hand washing. And thank you. Please spread the word. Spread the word, not germs. Hand washing protects infection, and again, hand washing, hand washing, hand washing. Thank you all. These are the references which I've used.
I think we have already overshooted the time today. There was one question I could see in the chat box. I think you can just take it because it's relevant. I could see one question in the chat box. You can just answer it.
Yes, ma'am. What about the office rooms which are completely sealed and there is no natural ventilation at all, including exhaust? For example, in my room for at least 6 to 7 hours and more nowadays, what is the solution? Ma'am, like centrally, where central ACs are not being used, there, in this, I hope so, ma'am, the central AC is functioning. Cross ventilation, that is an issue where cross ventilation, is, I think, central AC, that works fine.
I think that is a major problem with all the rooms here. We don't have a
Yes,
ventilation here, but
yes, ma'am. But central AC is there, yes, ma'am.
Yes, we cannot do anything about that because there are.
At the most, during frequent intervals, what we, at the most, we can just open our doors.
Yes. Okay, I guess now we don't have much time left. I think we can, whatever questions are there, we can ask you afterwards also. So I think we have to now wind up the session today. So thank you, Dr. Amber, for just quickly. We had all attended the workshops in the last year, all those things, and then it was a quick refreshment, refreshing our knowledge again. And I think with this we can just find out today's session.
Thank you,
if there are any questions, I can just request the participant, they can directly contact you, and because we don't have really, like, we have it's nearly 7:40, so I think we should wind up the session today. Okay.
Thank-
Thank you, everyone.